Hi, I'm Jim Frith, founder of Top Fit Pros, and I have been asked so many times whether it's normal to have greater strength on one side than the other of the body. And I always thank people for asking that question because it speaks right to the heart of why I train people the way I do in Top Fit Pros. So the answer is yes, it's pretty normal to be stronger on one side of the body than the other. But is it optimal? No, it's definitely not optimal. Now, there's some obvious reasons why. You can't carry a load evenly if you're stronger on one side of the body or the other. At least if you're going to carry the load evenly, you're basically going to go to the strength of the weaker side in order to carry that load. Otherwise, you're going to fail in carrying the load. So that's kind of an obvious reason, but that's not really the best reason. The best reason why your muscles should be balanced is because you can't maintain a stable skeletal structure if your muscles are unbalanced. Think about it. If a muscle is stronger on one side, it's pulling harder on the bones it's connected to on that side. And that can create some serious problems. Mainly, it creates instability and risk of injury. Well, let's say it's in the spine. Let's say it's pulling on the spine in one direction or another. That means your spine becomes misaligned. But in any joint, the balance of the muscles will dictate the health of the joint. So you may end up simply with pain in certain joints that you wouldn't have had if the muscles were balanced. It also distorts your movement patterns. So for example, if your adductor muscles or muscle, one of them, is too tight or too strong relative to the muscles that oppose it, then on the side that that's true, you may have your knee going in different circumstances when you're trying to maneuver. And that knee going in could set you up for a catastrophic knee failure. This is not theoretical and occasional and could happen once in a blue moon. I mean, these are things that happen a lot in major injuries that people incur, really are set up because of overactivity of certain muscles. If you're up in your hip area and you have a deep hip flexor that's too tight, then that creates instability in both the hips and the low back. And it may lead to back pain, it may lead to back injury or hip injury. And it goes on up in the spine and the arms, the shoulders, all of these different areas where muscle imbalances create injury. It may be a torn rotator cuff, it may be a pinched nerve in your neck, it could be any number of things. So it's very important to manage the muscles and try to create balance and avoid those distorted movement patterns. So how do you do that? How do you balance muscles out? One thing is that you make sure that they are regularly stretched. So that's kind of obvious. If a muscle is too tight on one side, you want to stretch it. But you have to make time for that, make room in your schedule for doing that. That's a big part of why we stretch for 10 minutes at the end of every workout is we want to identify muscles that may be imbalanced and lengthen those out, lengthen the side that's tight or overactive out so that it doesn't create those problems the next time we work out. And why do we do it at the end of the workout? We do it at the end because that's when the muscles are warmed up and more malleable and you're going to have a better result. If you've got somebody, a professional that you rely on for myofascial release, which is deep tissue work in massage, that's great. Or if you know how to do it, that's value too. So you can do a release and then lengthen through stretching. But in the exercise realm, you have various options. You can do exercises that simultaneously work both sides, which is great. So, you may do presses, push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, all those kinds of things that work both sides of the body at the same time. But that's very limiting because if you're working both sides of the body at the same time, that means everything pretty much is in this straight ahead plane of motion, which is called the sagittal plane. And that totally leaves out the rotational stabilizer and lateral movement stabilizers that you have throughout your body that are the very muscles that most often get injured or lead to injury in daily living. Why? Because the most common injuries are in change of direction, either rotation or lateral movement. So it's very important to strengthen those two and keep those in balance. So how do you do that? You do it with integrated multiplanar exercise. What does that mean? That means you're using a lot of different muscles integrated. You're using them together in a coordinated fashion in all different planes of motion. So twisting, turning, lateral movement, all those kinds of things. So side planks, for example, side crunches, transverse lunges, all kinds of different rotational and lateral movements that you can do in exercise that use a lot of these different muscles, but you have to do it in mirrored exercises. So if you're going to do an exercise twisting to the left, then you need to do the same exercise twisting to the right. And that's just kind of scratching the surface of the issue. But that is vitally important if you're going to have a balanced, stable body that will be less likely to get hurt in your daily existence. So work on all those. This is a big part of why we do what we do. Multiplanar, integrated exercises, lots of different ones, great variety, working on muscles all over your body, which leads to greater stabilization and strength, usable strength, functional strength in your body, and much less likelihood of injury.